Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch Harlan, and welcome to the Truth Talks podcast. Oh, this episode today is a good one. I am here with Keith Mitchell. Keith Mitchell, how are you?
I'm well. It's great to be here. Looking forward for the conversation.
Oh, you know what? This is a conversation that you and I've had. We've had discussions off camera before. We actually even filmed some other stuff, and you're this guy that intrigues the heck out of me. Your story is absolutely amazing. Then I kind of got to know who you were, not just from stuff that had been written down, but after our conversations, you're this really interesting guy that's had this pretty wild transition in life. So I'm going to start out by talking about Keith Mitchell, the football player. I think we have to start there. All-pro NFL linebacker, undersized, from Texas A&M, leading into the NFL. And I want you to tell me a little bit about that. And then we're going to transition into this really amazing story of what you're doing now, which I think is equally, if not more important.
Yeah, because, the football stuff is the boring stuff at this point, so.
Hey, not every day do I get to talk to an all-pro NFL linebacker, all right? Give me a little bit here.
Yeah, for sure. I started with a vision, an idea, a dream, and, out of Garland, Texas, that I could do something. And I created this idea in my mind and I stuck to it. One of my coaches who were teaching a class, he asked me a question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And that made me reflect on where I wanted to be. And by reflecting on where I wanted to be, I realized I had to do something to get me where I wanted to be. And so through that process, it was football, Dallas, Texas, that area. I was a suburb too, everybody wanted to be a part of the Dallas Cowboys. They were winning, and it just made sense. It was the masculine concept, and as a kid, as a young boy, desiring where he wanted to be, that's what I put my endeavors on, and I attained it.
You were talked about as being undersized. How big were you in college?
Well, undersized, I don't know. I think sometimes they just make up stuff, man. I was probably, around 6'2", 6'3", 225, was probably my biggest weight in college. And that's about right. That was, yeah, I got it done at that weight. No, I had no problem. Maybe coming out of high school to college was a transition because the guys, it was linebacker U. And we had the wrecking crew, and I was probably 6th, 7th string at that point, coming in and looking at all these grown men that I'm gonna have to compete with to play on Saturdays at that point, and that wasn't happening. So I had the red shirt. So maybe they are talking about my college stuff, because when I got to the pros, I was ready. I was ready to be there.
The story of the draft and the phone calls. Tell us a little bit about the draft.
Well, the draft was something that, I had been AP All-American my senior year. I probably had average 15, 16 sacks a year. I think my collegiate record, I think I have 42 sacks in my as a career. I was all Southwest Conference first team, and then I was all Big 12 Conference. And, everything was leading in that direction to be where I wanted to be on Sundays when it comes to the draft. And for whatever reason, it didn't happen. I got passed up. I played a tweener type position. The interesting thing about the draft also that sticks out is when, 7th round, which is the last round, Coach Bill Cowher calls and he's saying, son, I'm thinking about drafting you and another guy. And I think because I was in my emotions and he said, I'm thinking about, that didn't register well with me. And so, which actually, as I look back, that would have been probably the better position for me because that's what they did. I could have done exactly what I did in college there in the pros in Pittsburgh. But nevertheless, I was in my emotions and he went on and drafted the other guy. I told him, Coach, you'd probably be better off drafting him anyway. So, and he did that. And I got undrafted.
And by the way, all your statistics on yourself are correct, just in case you wanted to know.
Okay.
Yeah, you did a good job remembering your life.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, I prided myself on getting to the quarterback. So, I did that. And so, yeah, so the draft passes and then Coach Mike Ditka calls and he's saying, son, I don't know why you didn't get drafted, but that's not my concern right now. My concern is I feel you can play for us. I feel you can help us win. And I want you to come play for me. He just, he was just taking the job there in New Orleans. And I was like, I knew I could play. I had worked hard. I worked my butt off through my career. And I was ready. I felt I could do it. And just as a kid, with that vision and that dream. And I went there to New Orleans to learn a whole different position. I went to New Orleans to learn football. It's like a crash course of football 101. And I did it. And I became a starter my rookie year, undrafted, and later, voted into the Pro Bowl by my peers and teammates and fans and so forth. And, the rest is in the books on that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing story because your NFL career really kind of leads us into this whole process of mindfulness, which is really where I got to get into the kind of that head of Keith Mitchell. And it's really, your story just absolutely fascinates me. So we can't end it there. Part of your NFL career is an injury.
Yes. By that time, so I'm in New Orleans for a stint of 5 years, and then I go to the Houston Texans for a year. I'm started there. I actually ended up playing the defensive end role. So I had to go back to play what I played in college, which was so interesting to see that transition and to do that. And then going to Jacksonville, where Jack Del Rio had taken on the head coaching job there. I first met Jack in New Orleans as a rookie, and he got his head coaching job, and he had me come over to Jacksonville. And so, yeah, like you said, that's really where my journey began. I didn't really like Jacksonville, but it was like, okay, I'm familiar with Del Rio, and he's familiar with me, and so yeah, we took that journey on. But second game of the season, we played the Buffalo Bills, and making a tackle I had made a million times. So much of my life, you make a big collision, you get up, celebrate with your teammates to build momentum, to win the game ultimately. And on this particular play, after this collision, I'm on my back and I'm not able to move. And I'm in this position. I had never seen myself, never felt myself in the most vulnerable position I've ever been, in amongst 80,000 people watching, and whoever's watching, millions watching on television. And my journey began there. Spinal contusion, suffering paralysis, not being able to move, not being able to walk. The doctors, not being able to give me the answers as I've been told they were able to do and supposed to do. And so what do you do in that time? So, I hit it hard,
This is what I love about the story. Not that you had an injury, but the idea is a lot of people, they work so hard for this moment. They have this injury and they feel like everything's done. Everything's taken away. This was actually the beginning of a whole new journey for you, which really, really intrigues me in who you are. So you have this injury, you're struggling or in uncared, doing treatment, so on and so forth. But this is where your next movement takes place and takes off. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I go to my doctor. I had a doctor out in Miami, Dr. Uribe at the time, to do a second evaluation of what was happening with me, because in Jacksonville we were just unclear. And so I'm in this situation. All of a sudden I'm here with this one nurse, and she's mentioning to me about conscious breathing. She didn't say conscious breathing. She just proposed the question. She says, "Do you know what happens when you breathe?" And I was like, I was in a situation where I never thought about, when I breathe and what happens, right? And so she began to explain to me. She says, on the inhale, the diaphragm pushes down. On the exhale, it pushes up. And we take about 10,000 breaths a day. And so what we can do with our breath is we can create a concept of healing ourselves. Again, she didn't break it down like that, but I began to connect the dots as she was saying that. And how that inspired me was, and how I was actually, my mind was set at that time is like, give me the playbook, let me execute. And so what she gave me, the tool, the empowerment of realizing that I can contribute to my own healing. And that was a game changer for me in that predicament, because when I realized that I could participate in my own healing, then I realized I wasn't the victim.
Which is, this is what's made your story so fascinating to me. I mean, whether, however you see it in your own world, but for us, we're sitting here talking to an all pro NFL linebacker. That's cool for us. You might be past that, but we're not past that. We're thinking it's cool. But then when we go in, this is another thing that intrigued me, right? Like, I'm in the healthcare field and I see pain every day. And then when I start hearing that story, man, there is so much we don't know about the human body. And you have taken that into a whole new role. As a matter of fact, you've become famous in that arena as well. You've been in the White House, you've been on numerous shows, you've been interviewed by numerous people. That was an interesting transition. So when did you start to take on that role as a leader in that type of an environment?
Well, yeah, I had to go through my own quarantine. To be honest, I went through my quarantine. I had relationships, mother, father, sister, and the relationships were surface. They were very superficial. Even though I said I loved them, but we didn't have the real engagement or relationship established where I felt that I wanted to be exposed to them. So I went into my own solitude, and I had a nurse there at the house taking care of me, basically. And in that quarantine, I began to question my life. I began to question where I was. I'm like, I got all these cars, I got these homes, and I'm confined to one room. I can't drive all those cars. What do I have them for? I began to question certain things in my life. And it really seems like I began to go through a mental detox, an emotional detox, because I realized that if I was going to heal, I needed to let go of the things that were toxic in my life, the toxicity in my thoughts. And I began to pre-digest that, certain things, even with laying on the floor, like one of the nurses would have me just on the floor, and I just would find myself breathing, and she would stack pillows, and I would have myself in these different positions. And I would just be going, when I, bringing in the breath, I would just go into memory of where I had taken my body, where I had been with my body. When you talk about self-worth in a business where you constantly compromise your body, well, what you realize, you have very little rapport with your body. Your body's like, I don't know who you are. I don't know, it's like you've constantly put me in harm's way. So that trust is not there. I started to realize that wasn't there, and I had to create it if I wanted to be well. This is how my mind was thinking. The breathing gave me and allowed me time to reflect and process my situation. It allowed me to be present in that moment. And in those moments, I began to make use of time. I begin to make use of my energy, my thoughts. And again, not knowing this sequence as I'm speaking it to you now, just kind of like just going with it and just, being with it, being guided with it, if you will. You can call it spiritual, you can call it whatever you like, but I'm grateful for that. And because I feel that's what pulled me through.
That is what I love about the story, is the fact that, this is stuff that people don't usually talk about. I have people who, a good buddy of mine, he's an MD, does trauma. He's so big into meditation. He's like, listen, man, if you meditate, you're going to eliminate about 90% of your problems. And it's really, we're still not there. It's 2021 and we're still not there. We're take a pill for this, take a pill for that. It's really tragic. And I actually follow you on some social media stuff. I see things that you post. But it's very interesting, your concept in life, because you seem to be a very conservative guy, but yet on the same token, like everything that you do is really highly processed and it's really thought about. And I think that is just amazing, because some of the stuff that you're doing, while widely accepted now, still isn't where it really probably needs to be in this world. As you're transcending through this process of learning about yourself, at what point did you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to teach this to others?
Well, I didn't think about teaching it. Like, it was one of those things that I was just doing it for myself, for my own healing. And then what I began to realize is that so many other people were in certain predicaments, maybe not to the extreme of the paralysis that I was going through, but in a sense of where they were. It was like it was revealing things for them that as they saw me progress and make my strides, they realized that there. And I started putting that together. I'm like, okay. And, one of the, what is it? The TV shows reached out to me, Dr. Oz. And, at that time, I didn't even have a website. Again, my initial wasn't to like teach by any means. It was just for my own healing. And again, so I went on the show, didn't have a website, wasn't promoting like, oh, I'm gonna be teaching here. It's just kind of something that organically happened. But I realized through the process that when we talk about humans and as we exist, we are the first lineage to nourishment, to nutrition. We're on that first tier, and we are the medicine. So the experiences that we go through by sharing our stories, by letting and giving and really authentically, unapologetically, even just sharing what we've experienced and where we've been, it gives others an opportunity to see themselves and where they've been, where they are, and realize that they can too make some adjustments. They can too overcome, And so even as I teach, or continue to teach now, I realize the continuation of my own healing is doing just that. It continues to sharpen my ability to do what I do. It continues to keep me motivated to continue to do what I do. It's just that thing that I feel a lot of times humans, we sleep on the reality of what we are and what we can contribute to the world. And this is why I say life has no meaning, really. We give meaning to life. And it's a game changer when we can look at ourselves as such. It's an empowerment when we can look at ourselves as such. So now we can realize we can solve our own problems.
Yeah, that's amazing. What's kind of fun too about doing this episode was Devin Kern introduced me to you. He gave me your name, and what was really interesting about it is when he told me about Keith Mitchell, he says, "Hey, listen, you need to run a podcast as Keith Mitchell. This guy is amazing. He's into mindfulness. He's into yoga. He's into all these things that really empower the body, empower the mind." And I'm like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. Sounds like a wonderful message. And what was really intriguing was he didn't happen to mention you were an NFL football linebacker until at the very end of his thing. What that is really interesting to me is that this whole new purpose you have has now become your purpose and your power and who you are. And you even kind of mentioned and alluded to it when we started the podcast that football was just a beginning of the journey.
Yeah, it was a beginning of the journey, but I also feel, by all means, I celebrated my career. I played, I gave it all. I gave everything I had. I have no regrets. It is what it was. And the lifestyle, the journey I had learned through the process, in a sense, it's seasoned me for what I am and what I do now. I think a lot of times people would pay attention to me because I come from that background, and so I definitely, I don't want to come across as if I'm not, happy about my accomplishments in sports. I just feel that that's one part of my journey that's alluded to like all the other things. And how I see my wins at this point in my life is seeing how I can share with the people who maybe are listening that they can be inspired and motivated to go and create a formula for coming out of wherever they're coming out of.
That's why I love talking to you, because I get that. I mean, that comes out of you like nothing before. I mean, that you just rain that down on people. I want to ask you this question, just, again, shooting from the hip type of thing, but do you think you would have found this without the injury?
Well, probably not. I probably wouldn't be where I am today. I probably wouldn't. It definitely put me on a trajectory of like self-discovery, which, when I break it down, I just did a retreat a week ago, Intimacy Mastery 2. And really what I find is the love affair that we're really seeking or really desiring from others is really the love affair that we can discover within ourselves. Because that curiosity of how I can love myself better, how I can function better, is the quest that we'll be on for the rest of our lives. And that's the kind of love that you want, but that's the only love that you can actually give to yourself. you know?
I agree with you. And you know what they always say is great personal defeat ends up with great personal achievement. And I love all of that stuff. But what would Keith Mitchell say to somebody who didn't have a spinal cord injury? Maybe they're just in a relationship that isn't going well. Maybe they're in a job that they don't really like. Does it take a big tragedy to turn into this Keith Mitchell of today? Or what do you tell those people when they come to listen to you, they come to your retreats, they come to these things? Do you tell them to find whatever it is they're trying to break down, or are you just trying to get them to get self-absorbed into their own mind and really love who they are?
Well, I propose questions. I think all problems are solved by question and answer. And one of the main questions I ask is, what do you desire? You know, what do you desire? Like, kind of like what my coach mentioned to me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? But I just asked the question, what do you desire? And when you begin to identify that thing that you desire, well, name three things that are inhibiting you. And when you begin to break that down, you realize that all the three things that are inhibiting you typically are within yourself. You are blocking yourself. And so why? So now when you're talking about taking that step to that next level, well, this is the process that we have to do. This is, and it's even as simple as it's stated or said, there's work to do, because these patterns are so hardwired in our thinking, and we've conditioned ourselves to do all these types of things with doubt and fear, but we can overcome that.
Well, of course, I'm not going to let you off the hook with that. So here's a story. I mean, all the problems we're facing today in the political environment, in racism, in all these different things that seems to have the world just tilted and pissed all the time. What do you say to them?
Well, I mean, first, again, I think one of the greatest disruptions on the planet that we can create within ourselves is how we relate to others. But again, it starts with how we relate to ourselves, because many times, majority of the times, all the hatred within us and how we feel about ourselves are what we project on others. If we're critical of ourselves, we're going to be critical of other people. If we have a lot of fear within ourselves, then we're going to be very fearful of other people. Building relationships, learning how to build relationships. How do we learn? We come up in environments that says, love your mother. Why? Because that's your mother. And love your father. Why? Because we never learn to cultivate love. So love, how I share it is, or suggest, is typically a figment of your imagination. Just ideas, but we can cultivate, we can learn how to grow relationships. And it really entails asking questions. Does that curiosity, like I mentioned about the nurse telling me about breathing, as I have been an athlete who's used my body physically for my whole life, right? And you talk about the rehabilitation that we do in the off season, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I never contemplated the simple concept of what happens when I breathe. That curiosity was never there. Do you know how you work? Do you know how you function? It's like that little simple thought is never cultivated. And that's like we go outside of ourselves and we search all these different things, but we never come back to self and realize what it is, what am I doing? How do I show up? And what does it look like within me? Those simple things begin to create the ripple effect.
No, I love it. I love what you write. I love what you teach, because I think you're dead on with that stuff. I just absolutely love it. You know what kind of part of the story that fascinates me too is, why do you think that nurse took such an interest?
I don't know. I'm grateful, because again, like if she was standing here, I wouldn't be able to point her out. Because it's just like a blur. But I'm so grateful that she began to give me, because when you talk about breathing, here's the thing. The breathing, in particular for that masculine energy, that hyper masculinity that we have on the planet, not only just men, but also with women. When you breathe, you slow down the process. You begin to process the experience, right? And by processing the experience, you're not, just erratic with your expression. So now by slowing things down and processing better, now I can have a more intentional outlay, output, the words I speak can be more strategic and thought out. It can be more, so now I'm creating not only emotional maturity, but also I'm creating an emotional vocabulary to share my thoughts specifically to where I'm coming from, to share and how I want this to, unfold. Like, do I want it to be constructive or do I want it to be destructive? These types of things begin to play through the processing mechanism.
Well, I think maybe that nurse was exactly what you teach, right? Maybe she was exuding love that day, felt love, and she wanted to see you get better, and she gave you the best possible advice she could have for that day, and literally turns Keith Mitchell into this new Keith Mitchell.
Well, I feel that we all have that essence, right? Because we were born with a certain level of purity. Just, we're a blank canvas coming into the world. And what happens is we're influenced by all these outside forces that we begin to take in, never really breaking it down to say, hey, this is this and this is that. Like, we never get that. It's like when we were kids, we used to ask a bunch of questions. And I feel maybe that through the process, we were told to shut up, right? To stop asking so many questions. And we literally did just that. And we don't ask any more questions. One of the things I was talking about in my retreat this past week is the illusion. The greatest illusion is that we're having actual conversations, because you're assuming that my interpretation of love is this when it's not. So why don't we get clarification? Meaning, what do you mean by this? Or if I'm stating and making a statement, well, I begin to explain more of my statement. So now what we're talking about, we're building an understanding to have conversations. It's like, it's like we're like, again, I laugh. Well, I don't laugh, but I laugh at myself. Let's put it like this. When I learned yoga, I learned to balance in the four corners of my feet. Because, a lot of people are just existing. They're not even in their feet. They're not even in their bodies. When I learned meditation, conscious breathing, I learned how to breathe. So most people are breathing shallow, meaning they're in that fight or flight state the whole time. When I learned veganism, I began to learn how to eat, right? And so this whole process of thinking, what do I know? And being so dogmatic to what I know, I haven't even given myself a chance. You know what I'm saying? I haven't even given myself a chance. So now we're talking about the basic fundamentals of building conversations. We don't have that yet. You talk about 2021, we're just learning how to talk to one another.
You know what cracks me up about that? Here's a story, right? This is serious. I troll you on freaking social media, right? It was one, and I'll bring it up now. Now's the perfect time. It was about vaccinations, right? And you made this post, and for decades, people are starting to come out now and say, wait a minute, maybe there's a lot to this whole mindfulness, this whole energy thing, this yoga stuff. Maybe even a clean diet may make someone feel better and think better. This is 2021, but we're just now coming into this realm. And I love when you post things, and then I love how your comment, you're never engaging in a negative way. And that pisses half those people off. I'm thinking, and I want to get on there so bad and be like, say something. Like, I've been trying to see if I can get your goat, right? I'm like, all right, maybe I need to say something here to this guy. But it is fascinating because it is almost an awakening of sorts. And I just think there's so many people that aren't awake to really, their body and what they do and how important it is. And, we always talk about moderation and everything, but again, I've seen pictures of you. You're absolutely ripped. I can tell you're grounded with the world and just, again, the way you talk with just this joy and gratitude and purpose. And, it's so inspiring when I hear that. And again, I kind of put together the whole picture. I mean, I see this warrior. You had to be a warrior when they put that helmet on. And then I see this guy over here on the other side who's about love and purpose and gratitude. And it's just refreshing, man. You're a refreshing human being in the world. And I'm so grateful for Devin for getting us connected. It really meant a lot to me. I got to ask a couple other things because there's been a couple posts as I've been trolling you, of course.
Okay, let's do it.
What do you think about God? Sometimes when that gets mentioned, there's this kind of an interesting thing, and I can't tell how big a role that plays in your life, if any.
Well, God is an interesting concept. By definition, it means power. So what's so interesting is when you talk about the state of the world right now and what you'll know about the body. Well, the body can't hold two sensations at once. So you can't be in your power with God and have fear at the same time. So the tell of the tape, as people talk about the data, right? Well, the data is so many people are fearful. So many people haven't left their houses in over a year. So what are you going to tell me about God? It's very interesting when you talk about a practice, right? The practice, when I tell people, is if I'm going to claim a God or power or a practice as a practice of my life, and when adversity hits, I'm afraid just like everyone else. Well, what's the point of having this God? What's the point of having this practice? Because you're to expect, right? Because we've lived life long enough. It's not about when adversity hits, but it's like we know it's going to hit. It's not if, it's but when. And we're prepared when it happens. That's why we practice. That's why we do the due diligence of what we do on a day-to-day basis to hold that space. So when it hits, I'm prepared and I got the tools to sustain me. And this is why in my life and what I do, we've been going as planned.
I see that. I see that, again, you kind of eliminate, and I love how you just kind of phrase that too. Yeah, this COVID thing, there's so many different spectrums around it, right? Some people are scared to death to leave their house. Some people make you feel guilty if you forget to put your mask on because you're going to, kill their grandmother or whatever it is that they've come to believe about a COVID virus.
Yes.
And I really like the way you do that. I mean, it does appear that you live without fear. It appears that you bring that mental toughness in, that really understanding of self again, and you just got to live your life.
Yeah, and let's go back. Let's do a little bit more into that, because if you go into just look up the concept of virus, right? Well, it's already been proven. We got a Nobel Peace Prize winner, Emoto, who says proven, like a theorem, meaning a fact, that viruses cannot live in oxidized environment. So if that is the case, then I begin to change my diet to more of an alkaline diet, which is meaning it has the processing capabilities of that assimilates to my body. And on top of that, it's also providing me the amounts of oxygen that I can feed my immune system. Let's go into moving the body so we can learn how to detox and move the lymphatic system around, move the blood flow around to allow our bodies to circulate, to boost that iron through the body, to boost that vitamin D through the body. So we can have a tight immune system that can protect us in a time of adversity. We call in the virus right now. So let's go into that. So people, again, we can look for the Savior, and we can allow that intelligence that the Savior or this God has innately given into us. We have understanding, we have knowledge, and it's here for us.
Innate intelligence. You're preaching to the choir there, my friend. You're preaching to the choir. I mean, that's what it is. And then we also believe, especially producer Chad, that bourbon also kills all viruses. It's not just an oxidized state, but bourbon kills all viruses, just to put that out there.
I'm not aware of that.
But I tell you, that is, so for me and you having this conversation, I'm doing this, right? But there's so many people that are like, even people that you make these comments sometimes, and then they just want to tear into that. You're not talking about a theory. That's been proven. That is science. That's what science says. And so how do you then, do you put that stuff out there and then you're just 100% fine with it? Doesn't matter what anybody says?
Well, yeah, because I truth is one of those things that doesn't have to be, like, truth stands for itself. It's like, it doesn't have to be validated. It's a fact. Go, and if you do disagree with it, go look it up and see. And what happens is you hear crickets. They're gone. They're like, okay.
I love it, but you're killing so many people on those posts. That is the best.
Yeah, and I think that the dynamic, again, when it comes to humans being in a community, to have situations that we can solve, well, we have to be able to have conversations. And that's the nature of relationships, So, and for the people who are listening, I have a book coming out, the Mindfulness Playbook, and the first chapter is Define Your Words, because the words have been defined for us. So when we talk about conversations, what I mean by conversation is conversations are for building. Arguments are for winners and losers. But we're looking to have conversations because we're looking to build, meaning you may know something that I need to sharpen, and I may know something that maybe can help sharpen you up more. And that's what the human family can do for one another. This is why we are the medicine.
I love it, man. I truly believe that your program and just who you are, there's so much to that. I mean, there's so much truth in what you say. And I have already learned a ton from you. Just throw it out there. It's truth. I'm out of here, man. I'm not coming back to that one till the next post. Absolutely love it. I tell you what, Keith Mitchell, one of the things that I have to do here with True Talks, and again, when we bring on a story, we believe it's going to help someone. We believe that it saves somebody. We believe that it's going to enhance their life in one way or another. How do people get a hold of Keith Mitchell? How do people get involved with your programs?
Definitely. KeithMitchell59.com is my website. I have a new website coming. My social media handles Keith Mitchell 59. My Twitter is a little different, K_Mitchell 59. 59 is not my age, but it was my jersey number. And it's still with me because that was my gateway to get to where I am now. So it's kind of lingering right now, but who knows? Maybe I'll change my name in the future.
No, don't do that. People start getting crazy and then they come up with these crazy names, and Keith Mitchell is Keith Mitchell, baby.
So here's the thing. So you got Shaman, God knows what, right? And then you got Keith. It's like
I like Keith. I like Keith. Keith Mitchell 59.
Yeah.
So you do these classes. People can come, they can participate, actually get hands-on.
Yeah, I do a lot of retreats. I work in a factor, like I work with a lot of, like one of the companies, Oracle. I work with Oracle, Merrill Lynch, Deloitte, Bank of America. I've been doing, since COVID, a lot of just Zoom classes, different regions of these different companies. It's pretty interesting, it's just going through the mental, it's the yoga of the mind, right? And it's like mindfulness is like, is again, we solve problems by questions and answering. And we begin to break these questions down and these ideas down, because what you'll find is most of the stressors, I would even go and say probably about 70% of our stress is induced by ourselves, on ourselves.
It is fascinating though, speaking with you, because I love anything where there is a transition and somebody finds their greatness in something else as well. And man, you are an epitome of all of that. And I want to encourage everybody, especially our listeners, go look up your story, look up all the stuff that you're doing. I think people can value so much from what you're doing. It's just magical. And I hope, my 8 seconds already on this thing is just tell the truth and leave it alone.
There you go.
Don't engage. Just leave it alone.
Yeah, because it doesn't need to be validated.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Keith Mitchell, I want to tell you how much we appreciate you coming on with us again. We had a little issue, and you were kind enough to come back on and do it again for us, and we can't tell you how much that we appreciate that. But we were going to try and push as many people as we can. I think what you're doing is amazing. Keep up the amazing work. Let's please stay in touch.
Yes, of course.
If you have an extra 59 jersey laying around with a signature Keith Mitchell, we want to put it back here on the wall. We're getting ready to redo the studio.
Oh, okay.
When the book comes out, we need it. We've got all of our books, and then we'll promo that as well, because I guarantee you there's life lessons and some amazing stuff in that thing.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's going to be an ebook. It's going to be audio, and obviously a hard copy. So it's my first book. So I'm very excited to put it out, and looking for some of the response.
Fantastic. Again, Keith Mitchell, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your knowledge with us. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much.